let's get started. And it is my pleasure today to welcome our guest speaker, Evan Saunders. Evan is a business management graduate from Newcastle University and has had a global career and a very interesting career. Currently Vice President of Tourism and Hospitality at Uber Media, which is a leading global mobile data analytics and business intelligence company focused on location analysis based in the United States. Evan is going to be sharing today some of his career journey and some of the lessons that he's learned and some of the career successes and lows that he's had. So without any further ado, it is my pleasure to invite Evan to speak today.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and excited to walk you all through a bit of my background and kind of the changes I've had over the years for different positions and how I got those positions and what happened after I left Newcastle and kind of where I am today, and hopefully not bore you with any of the details in between all of that. So we'll cover a lot in the next 20 minutes, but my pretty much exclusive goal is to inspire, motivate, and provide guidance during today's call. So please feel free to ask questions, general or specific, whether it's about my life or just general questions at the end of this, because it'll be fun to answer yours specifically. A little bit about me. I'm from Boston, USA originally, and I ended up at Newcastle because my father was my father knew I loved to travel. He knew I liked to go abroad, and he convinced me to apply to university in the UK. And through the UCAS system, I could apply to 6 universities, right? You all probably all know this. And Newcastle was just in the top 20. I researched it. I thought the online presence looked great. And knowing nothing, honestly, about Newcastle, besides the videos I saw online, I decided to apply there. I got in for business management because different than America, you don't apply to your major. In the UK, you have to apply to your major. So I got into business management. I kind of packed my bags and flew into Newcastle. I remember flying in and seeing sheep out the window thinking, oh my goodness, what did I do to myself? But I was really excited about it and venturing into the unknown and kind of just saying I can do this. And that's kind of the theme of a lot of my career, is venturing into the unknown and saying I can do this. Graduated in 3 years, of course, had a great education, made great friends. It wasn't an overnight type of success. My first year learning the education system was a total curveball, totally different than America, the way you're graded, the way you're judged, how you're supposed to be writing. So the first year was a huge learning curve, both in the social world. You know, I was 18, 19 years old. I'd never really been to a bar. I mean, I'd been to a bar, but having beers with friends is not something you really do in America at that age and in such a casual environment. Coupled with the idea I knew nothing about sports in UK or Europe, and the education system was very new to me. But I was a sociable person in terms of like forcing myself to go talk to people and say hi to people, and thrusting myself into the sort of odd positions. And if I didn't do well in a class, I had to understand why. I thought I would do very well in this class. So it was a huge learning experience. And the time the 3 years were up, I came back to America a very different person, in a good way. And I came back to America applying to jobs like people do after they graduate, and telling people I went to university in Newcastle, England, and people asked where in London was that. And I realized there's sort of 2 sides to that question, is that because people didn't know about Newcastle, that allowed me to write the story for them. It allowed me to paint the picture of the great city and education that I got, and let them actually kind of soak up the experience that I had, because they knew nothing about Newcastle. They knew nothing too about the grades, what a first is, what a 2.1. So I had to convert that into American grades and kind of present myself much more as an American who just went to university in the UK, as opposed to someone who lived and breathed living and going to uni in the UK. So I came back and honestly had no idea what to do with my life. Candidly, I think I'm only 15 years later realizing what I want to do with my life. But what I've learned throughout this process is you don't ever need to know what you want to do with your life. You just need to be able to apply yourself and keep pushing yourself and trying new things. Eventually you will figure it out. But as long as you don't concern yourself with finding your perfect role or that's everything you wanted. You'll end up having really great experiences over your life and applying yourself and learning, most importantly. And you'll discover what you actually love, and you'll discover also what you don't love, which is equally as important. So I came back to America, no idea what I wanted to do with life. My father said maybe I should apply to a PR firm, public relations. I had no idea what public relations was. There was an internship available at a firm in Boston. I showed up to the firm pretty inexperienced and uneducated. I didn't do any research really on this. Shame on me, but I came and just described my background, what I'm passionate in, and tried to put my best foot forward in that. They said I was great, but they didn't have any roles at the PR firm, but they were doing PR for an around the world sailing race that was coming to Boston. And maybe I wanted to intern there. There was an intern position open, so they would make an introduction to me. They introduced me to the sailing event, and I knew nothing about sailing my entire life. Sorry if you hear background noise there. I knew nothing about sailing, but what I did is I knew who I was interviewing with, and I researched this person. He was CEO of a large sailing company. I read his interviews, and I memorized a lot of the canned stuff that he said in those interviews. And I basically regurgitated it in my interview, talking about the passion that the fans have for the sport, that it's not just about the event, it's about the experience. I remember that. And they were like, wow, this guy is great. He doesn't know a lot about sailing, but he's got the right energy, the right attitude. We want him to help with the volunteer program at the event. So I helped with the volunteer program at the event. They got me the internship there. It was great. It's my first real role working for our company. And over the course of working the volunteer roles, I decided to get involved in social media there. They weren't doing anything regarding social media. So I was like, you know, I'm going to take on this initiative. No one's asking me to do it, but I'm just going to do it on top of my current role. And I was doing the social media, and it was a lot of fun. And one of the sponsors of the race was blown away, I guess you could say, by the social media. I was doing some real estate firm. And when the event was over in Boston, they came to me and said, hey, would you do social media for us? And I had no idea, you know, to do consulting. I didn't even know what a consultant was. I didn't know what to charge. Again, huge learning curve. But I thought to myself, you know what, this isn't about the money right now. This big company is asking me to do work for them on a project base. Maybe I can find other clients too that want me to do social media. And so I started doing social media for this real estate firm. They introduced me to others, and slowly but slowly, I was getting a few clients every month to do social media for them, which was, this was back in 2009, so over 10 years ago. And so I was doing social media. It was great. I was enjoying it. But what I realized after a year is I didn't want to be a quote unquote social media expert. I liked marketing as a bigger thing, but I wasn't excited about setting up Facebook pages for clients and Twitter pages. I was just kind of, I'm not bored by it, but it just wasn't exciting me. So at the same time, my girlfriend at that time, also from Boston, got a work placement in China. And she said, hey, Evan, why don't you come move with me to China? And so I thought to myself, yeah, sure. You know, all I need is a computer to do my work. I'll go to China and I'll manage these social media accounts in China and kind of see what happens from there. So I already have kind of income coming from my social media consulting company, but we'll see what happens when I go to China and what adventures I get into. And so I moved to Beijing, knowing no one there, or really anything. And lo and behold, Facebook and Twitter were banned in China. So I couldn't even access them to do work for my clients. So there goes my consulting business out the window. No more income from that, no more client with that. I'm basically starting afresh in China. So, and my wife already has a job. She's working all day, every day. I started taking some Chinese lessons here or there, but I was really on my own to figure out next steps. I started doing two things. I went on Google and I researched Western companies in Beijing that were involved in marketing. And I must have come up a list of 200 random companies who even know what these companies were. And I started emailing all of them, who I am, what I'm passionate about, and just emailing, seeing if I could meet anyone for coffee. I really didn't know what to do. At the same time, I was reaching back out to contacts in Boston to see if they knew anyone to introduce me to in Beijing. Both of these paths had a lot of dead ends involved in them. Man, I went to coffee with a lot of people that went nowhere, some people that were just really not helpful at all. But one thing on me reaching out to Google is I found a company that let me join them as an intern. I was a director of business development, they called me, and you can get away with that. Sometimes being in a foreign country like that, a new title, but I was really an intern. And that allowed me to have some purpose there and some title and some role where I was working while I networked and tried to meet other people and find other opportunities. So I was introduced to someone in Beijing from Boston, a guy named Mirko, who honestly probably wanted nothing to do with me, but he invited me to a networking event where I met some other people who said, I need to meet this guy, Richard. Oh, you got to meet Richard. Your background, you're into social media. Oh, you got to meet Richard. So I was like, oh, I got to meet this guy, Richard, in Beijing. And so I must have emailed Richard once a week for 3 months straight. Sometimes he would reply and say, let's meet. And then he would cancel, then he wouldn't reply. And I just followed up. And finally, after 3 months in Beijing of following up with this guy, he decided to meet me for coffee. We met for coffee for 30 minutes. And he told me, you know what, you like social media, you're a good personable person, you follow up a lot. I know this startup company that's doing furniture design that needs a social media person. Why don't you meet with them? He made the introduction on like a Wednesday. On a Monday, I had a job with them full time doing social media. So I successfully got that first job in China, working full time for a Western company, doing social media. I had very limited experience. It's furniture design. I really had no idea what I was doing most of the time, but I was applying myself. 9 months of being in that startup, the startup failed, ran out of money, couldn't find success. And once again, I was without a job in China, not knowing what to do. But while I was in China, I was pretty observant, and I was talking to a lot of Chinese people and asking them what they like to do, telling them I was from Boston. And lo and behold, many of them had been to Boston. And long story short is I found out a lot of Chinese love going to America, obviously. And I started a company, or I wanted to start a company that helped business in America attract Chinese travelers. Okay, that was like my vision. I liked tourism. I reached out to some tourism boards in America just to ask them about this, like randomly, and they gave me some good feedback there. And it said, like, I want to start this company. I had zero experience starting a company, so it was something I did not feel comfortable doing myself. I really just had no idea what I was doing. And so from that first networking event I attended, like the first week I was in Beijing, I had met someone, a guy named Sam, who said, you know what, you should start this company and I'll be your co-founder. You do it full-time, I do it part-time. I'll give you the coaching you need and you should do it. And again, that's a long story short, but I decided to start this company doing helping businesses in America, which I already had some relationships with from my social media consulting company, helping them attract Chinese tourists, basically convincing them they need to attract Chinese tourists. So I started the company in Beijing with my co-founder, and then 6 months later, my wife and I decided we should move back to America and sort of restart our lives there. And I had this Chinese marketing agency that I was like working on, and she was going to find a new job in Boston. So we moved back, and over the course of 3 years, we grew the company, both in a good way. We grew it. We had revenues coming in. We signed over 200 businesses. I was a sales machine. But over the course of that period, I grew out of love with just focusing on Chinese travelers. Much like I grew out of love of just focusing on social media, I realized I liked marketing, I liked sales, but focusing on just Chinese travelers coming to America was not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And so we were trying to raise money. It was a pretty harrowing experience, the startup life, to be totally honest. We had about 30 employees. It was like every month, are we going to fail and run out of cash? And so lo and behold, the company came to us and wanted to buy our company, which was amazing. I already had one foot out the door, really, even though I couldn't do that as the person who's this kind of the face of the company. But essentially, the company's called Attract China, but a company in LA wanted to buy us. And so I decided with my wife, well, let's move to LA. My wife was working for a company that had offices in Boston and LA, so we could do that. So we said, you know what, warm weather, beautiful, let's do it. The company's buying us in LA. As that deal started to go forward, that company in LA, the CEO of the company, it was the LA Times, was fired, actually. And so that deal completely fell through. And we had zero money in the bank, and we had all this debt due. And I had to spend a lot of time convincing the current shareholders in the company to basically put more money in. And then I had to convince another CEO to join the company because I didn't want to be the CEO. And it was a pretty stressful, lack of sleep experience, but it was all successful in a way. Again, long story short, so I landed in LA, done with the Chinese company, not wanting anything to do with Chinese marketing again, having no idea what I wanted to do with my life again. My wife had a full-time job again, and so she's going to the office every day, and I'm like, what do I do? I don't know anyone in LA. Where should I go from here? And so, you know what? I'm gonna do the same thing I did in Beijing. I'm gonna reach out to everyone I can find on the internet and just ask them for coffee or phone calls, do whatever I can just to put myself out there in case something kind of stumbled across. I'm also gonna attend startup events because I like the startup community. And so I'm gonna attend events. And so I reached out to a lot of people in LA. That was almost all dead ends. It really got nowhere in LA. I tried really hard. Oh no, it did. But I'll get back to that in a second. So one avenue actually proved really successful. I reached out to a headhunter at a startup firm. Just again, I just wanted to meet people in the area and network, knowing this is going to take a while. At the same time, that's maybe the third week I was in LA, I went to a startup presentation. I paid $10 and went to the startup presentation where 4 really successful companies were presenting. So it wasn't like super startups, it was more mature startups. And I saw a company present on data, and I was like blown away. This is the most amazing thing. And so after that presentation, I reached out to that company and said, wow, I loved your presentation on data. I would love to take your data and apply it to the tourism industry. It looks so cool. And so I had a few conversations with them where they liked me, but it really went nowhere. They weren't interested in embarking on in the world of tourism yet. And I thought that's okay, you know. But fortunately, because I was going these 2 paths, the headhunter at a startup headhunting company introduced me to an electric scooter company who was looking for a head of sales and marketing, selling consumer products. I'd never sold a consumer product in my life. I knew nothing about electric scooters, but I pitched my heart out in that interview process. And about 4 months after arriving in LA, I had a full-time job as head of sales and marketing for an electric scooter company. And then over basically the next 2 years, we grew the heck out of it. I worked so hard. We hired lots of people. We went to a lot of events. I learned so much about online digital marketing and just selling product online. I learned how to sell during my time there like I had never done before, which was an amazing experience. But after about 2 years, I fell out of love with selling scooters. It was also, again, a startup company, early stage. Every month, are we going to succeed? Even though we're doing hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales, it was so stressful. Even though I wasn't the founder or anything, it was just so much pressure. And so I decided I was ready to move on from there. So I'd been in LA 2 years, had at least a good track record. So I finally had something on my resume that was like, wow, you really grew something, 2 different companies. Well, you know, you got something to showcase. But one was a Chinese tourism company and the other was a scooter company, neither of which I wanted to do afterwards. So it was like, okay, starting over, but at least I got some credibility. I have some cash in my bank account, thank goodness. Let's go out and find something new. And so I, again, attended events, and I went to events and I looked for companies where I thought had interesting products. I thought that's how I wanted to pursue things. I followed up with that data company again. They said, yeah, interesting. Thanks, let's keep in touch. So I kept in touch with that data company that I met the first time I was in LA, and it's kind of reached out to other companies. I met in LA then a startup hardware company, another hardware company selling consumer products. I was like, cool, that's my background. They're looking for a head of sales and marketing. That's what I do. They make a really cool umbrella, for lack of better words, electronic umbrella. I saw the application, great. I applied to them and I applied to a million other jobs, by the way, and got nowhere with them. So I had like one opportunity with this umbrella company, right? And so I applied to the umbrella company. I got the job. Awesome. My first day I'm going to the job, I get a call from the data company that I originally wanted to do tourism data for. And they said, hey, we'd love for you to come and do tourism data for us. I was like, oh, like this is my first day on the job at this umbrella company. Like, I'm sorry. Like, well, if it doesn't work out, let us know. And I was like, yeah, of course, I'll let you know. But like, I'm so excited to join the umbrella company. I joined the umbrella company, and I think within about 2 days, I realized the CEO was pretty crazy, and the company was not going to really go anywhere. And at that time in my life, we want to have a kid. We're planning for our family. I wasn't ready to join again this early stage startup where I'm working 1 million hours a week and not sure if it's going to be successful. And so I started freaking out about working for this umbrella company. It just was the wrong time in my life for that. And so I called the data company and said, okay, like, let's talk tourism data. I would love to do that. And so after 2 months, I got a job with the current company I'm with now, Uber Media, taking their data and applying it to the world of tourism. But again, the funny thing about this, and I quit the umbrella company. I was like, oh my God, I had a lifeboat that came and saved me from this umbrella company. It wasn't the umbrella company wasn't paying me. It was more like, this is not going to go anywhere, and I need to find something that I can be passionate about for a really long period of time, as opposed to a startup that could make it or break it any month. So I joined a data company, and I knew nothing about data. Zero. And I'm joining the company I'm at now, which is super technical data, company full of engineers and analysts. I didn't know a lot about tourism boards. I knew about the world of tourism, but all of a sudden now I'm joining a company where I'm selling products to tourism boards, which I'd never really sold to before. And I'm selling data, which I know nothing about. Talk about a learning curve. So they really took a chance on me, and I took a chance on them, but they were a more established company, had raised a lot of money, and they had confidence that I could talk the talk when it came to tourism, and they didn't expect me to know a lot about data. So we took a chance on each other, but I joined the company and worked my butt off. I didn't have a kid yet, so it was working all day, every day, trying to sell. And the benefit I had is I actually didn't know a lot about data. So I was more selling the solution. So this is what it can provide. And here's some examples of what it can do for you. And people would say, well, can we do this? And I'd be like, I have no idea. Let me go chat. And so it was a lot of throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks in a slightly more mature company. And a lot of things kept sticking and things kept growing. And our tourism sales exploded over a 2-year period. And finally, I said to myself, oh my gosh, I'm successful at selling a product for a company that can deliver on that product consistently. This is cool. Never in a million years did I think I would like the data world. And I'm still not sure if I do. I mean, I really do like it, but is this my life for the next 10 years? Is tourism my life for the next 10 years? I don't know, but I'm really happy. And I have a good work culture, and things are growing really nicely. Actually, about 3 months ago, after being at the company for just over 2 years, and you can see how this repeats, I'm starting a little bored. It's selling the same tourism data product, same growth, just, where is this all going? What am I doing with my life? Again, I have a kid. Is this really what I want? And so about 3 months ago, I started applying for other jobs. And I actually, funny enough, I got a job offer from a company I was really excited about a month ago. The next day, my current company announces there's a massive merger happening. We're all being, and then my CEO reached out to me. She said they want to promote me. They want me to do bigger global things. And I was like, oh my God, I just got a job offer for someone else. And they said, we'll more than match it for you. So I'm with my current company. I'm very happy. I'm doing what I love. And along the way, I've had a lot of failures, a lot of successes. I've hired a lot of great people. I've hired a lot of the wrong people. And I've really put myself out there. But as you can see, it's been a pretty turbulent road to get here. Life is not a sort of a straight line. Life definitely goes like that. And I work in the world of tourism, and tourism is like the worst industry right now in the world to work in, but we're doing very well, thankfully, because we're working so hard to do well. It's been a really fun journey. And so that's my life story in a nutshell. And I realize we're halfway through the hour, so I want to pause right there. And I'm happy to answer any questions. But it's been a lot of work to get here, but no doubt that hard work has paid off, and there is no secret to being successful. It is putting yourself out there and working really hard. no one becomes successful without hard work. So just remind yourself that when you're at home, you're applying to jobs, you're looking at internships, it's emailing, it's reaching out, it's doing things that make you feel uncomfortable, like showing up to that networking event that you don't want to go to, or calling that person at their office that you don't want to call because you just feel a little shy. All of that stuff. And the other side of that is a great feeling, and that feeling is success, because it does happen, but it only happens if you work really hard to achieve it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Evan. That has been very, very interesting and also very insightful. I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing about your career journey. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points before we open up the Q&A about what you were talking about during your kind of 25 minutes just now. By your own admission, you've had a few different jobs where you might not have known the ins and outs of the sector that you were working in, such as the scooter company. For your success when you were pitching for those jobs, do you think it was more the fact that you were able to apply the skills that you knew you had to those job applications and those job interviews to make you successful at that stage?
Yeah, it was two-sided. It was one about telling people what I'm good at, right? This is what I love to do. This is what I believe I can bring to the table, right? And as life went on, I had more things I could speak to regarding that. But no matter what you've done in life, it's got to be a bullet point, whether it's on your resume or what you're speaking about. And you really got to own that and show how it differentiates you. Find something or do things that will add value there. The other side, too, is researching the company, I realize, and saying, this is where, after I looked at what you provided, company X or company Y, this is where I think we could expand that. So the scooter company, I see you're selling to commuters at train stations, these scooters. This is what I think you can do with it outside of commuters at train stations. These are the cities where there are a lot of commuters at train stations. It might sound silly, but when you're interviewing someone, you want to make sure that they get what your company does. They're really excited about what your company does, and they can help your company do more. Whether it's small or large. So that research really, really adds an element. I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed where they just don't know a lot about the company, or at the end of the interview, I'll ask, do you have any questions for me? And they'll have no questions. And it's like the idea that they could have no questions shows me they don't know what they don't know, and they don't want to help find out. So being that curious person, asking questions, doing your research adds so much value to that interview process.
Brilliant. And we've had a question from Kitty, who is joining us on the call today. So Kitty is currently a PhD student who would like to move to the US. So she's asking, what would you say are the most obvious cultural differences between the UK and the US?
A lot, surprisingly. And even before I answer the question, I've hired people who are not from America while they're living outside of America. So, and at first it's daunting. You see that resume and the address is in Australia or something. You're like, why would I hire someone from Australia? So it's important to be mindful that when you're applying to a job in America, have the mindset that you're already moving to America. You already know you're moving to that city. You've picked out a place. You're there basically, even though you're not. So it's important to mentally and by your resume have already made a decision that you're there. In terms of the cultural differences, America's focused on America. We are not focused nearly as international as a place like the UK. We don't know a lot about a lot of other countries. We care about a lot of ourselves, what we're doing, what's happening in our city, and what's happening with our company. So knowing that, though, sometimes it's great. Like, I want to tell people about my time in the UK, but I got to start focusing on more about what I can apply to America. And people think it's cool I went to UK. People think it's cool I traveled all around the world, but they haven't done any of those things. So they're not going to find great intrigue or interest unless it actually applies to the company. So stay focused on it's a stupid phrase, but America first almost when applying to companies in America. Be your resume, be your LinkedIn page. You are there and you're focused on being there. That's basically the best tip I can give from a high level.
Wonderful. And just to carry on from that point, Evan, have you ever noticed any differences in terms of your time in Beijing and the US in terms of working hours and working ethics that would majorly stand out?
Yeah, I've noticed this in different locations. Like, yeah, Beijing was like the Wild West of it felt like in many ways, and it was a lot of fun, and there was a sense of freedom that you could do anything you wanted. Partially because you were a Westerner there, but partially because there wasn't, there were a lot of rules in a way, but there weren't a lot of rules. There was a great startup culture there in Beijing. In America, there's a lot more bureaucracy and a lot more rules when it comes to working environments. There's a lot more culture and being mindful of others here and being sensitive to others in a working environment. You have to be pleasant, nice, really collective. And obviously it's evolved a lot over the last 10 years. But and even in America, LA is so different than Boston. I mean, it might as well be Beijing and London. It's really that different. In LA, in Boston, I wore suit and tie every day to the office. In LA, I wore literally flip-flops and a t-shirt every day to the office. In Boston, they love sports, huge sports town, everything evolved around sports. In LA, they say they like sports, but it's just not, wasn't that same sports culture. And here's me, I don't really even watch sports. So yeah, again, knowing your audience and knowing that local vibe allows you, especially in an interview process, to kind of speak to it. I think that's important.
Wonderful. We've had a few questions from Annie, so I'll try and summarise as best as possible. And Annie, if I don't summarise correctly, please do feel free to pop them back in the chat. So Annie's asked, what is your elevator pitch when you explain why you went to the Newcastle University, and how do you frame the elevator pitch? So that's the first part of her question.
Yeah, and again, you have the opportunity to tell this story. It is totally on you to frame it however you're applying to that job. And it might be different. If I'm looking at the world, like the company I applied to now, the data company for tourism, I went to Newcastle because I love experiences abroad. I wanted to be abroad. I traveled so much while I was there. I love different cultures. I understand the world of tourism. And that's the reason I applied to university in the UK to begin with. That was the reason why I went to the tourism industry. For the sailing event or the PR firm or the scooter company, it was way more about the education system. That my father had been to the UK many times. He showed me the education system. I was really excited about the education system. I was excited that I could apply to business management and just live and breathe business management. That I didn't apply to a general subject and have to take general classes. I'm passionate about business, and the UK education system allowed me to just jump head over heels into the world of business. So two different types of ways to frame it, really, depending on the job I was applying to.
Wonderful. And then Annie's asked if you have any suggestions for books to read on sales that have helped you in your career, and also that you've mentioned events where you've met interesting companies. Are there any current events that that are going on that would be helpful? Although with the pandemic, we know that's a little bit harder at the moment.
Yeah, well, yes. So two words. There's a book, my favorite book. I'm just like Googling it right now. So it sounds silly. It's not a sales book per se, but it's a required reading for my son, and I think it's a fantastic book, which is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And it is the best sales book, even though it's not a sales book. So I highly recommend you read that, whether you're in sales or not, because it's really about the interview process too. How do you win people over? How do you get people to like you? There is a formula to doing that, and it's not like you have to do that every single day of your life, but during that interview process, you want people to like you. So that's sort of the answer to the book. In terms of now during the pandemic, yeah, we can't meet up with people in person, but it doesn't mean you can't reach out to someone and ask them for 10, 15 minutes of their time to speak. My wife, when we moved back, fiance at the time, girlfriend at the time, when we moved back to Boston, she was looking for jobs. And the advice that I was given to give to her was, why don't you go on LinkedIn? Find people that work for companies that are in the industries you're passionate about. email those people and see, I just moved back to Boston. My background is in industry X. You're working for a company in industry X. Do you have 15 minutes so I could just pick your brain about the landscape in Boston about these companies? And so it was like, you're not looking for a job. You're not even looking for anything. You just want to understand the landscape from this person. And so she did this with a bunch of people, but one of the people was head of the Industry X group in Boston on LinkedIn. So because she joined groups on LinkedIn. She chatted with this person, told this person what she was interested in. The person said it's very hard to find that. But if he sees anything, he'll let her know. And then 3 months later, she got a random call from this guy saying, you know what? I just got interviewed for a job that I don't want, but it sounded exactly like what you were looking for. You should interview at this company. And so she had never even met this person in person. She had only just done networking through LinkedIn. She really put herself out there. She was really focused on an industry, whereas I was not focused on an industry. I was like all over the place. And it worked out for her. But it was also patience and persistence. It wasn't an overnight thing, but it was really following up. It was having no expectations. It was talking to people where it didn't go anywhere, thanking people for their time. And if it, asking for introductions, is there anyone else you think I should speak to about this? I just want to learn. I'm passionate about understanding this industry in this city. So that's sort of, I guess, the answers to both questions there.
Yeah, wonderful. I just want to build on your point, Evan, there, because you're talking about LinkedIn, which is a great tool. But I'm not sure if everybody on the call today is aware, but we actually also have a platform at Newcastle University for alumni and also students called NCL Spark. So that's an exclusive platform for Newcastle University students and alumni, where you can go on there, you can connect with the network across the globe. And like Evan says, it's similar to LinkedIn, where you can go on and you can connect with people based on industry, location. And like you say, if there's somebody interested on there that you want to talk to, you never know, 3 months, a year down the line, that person might pop up again. And so yeah, really kind of utilize those tools, I think, is a great feature, really. And I think at the end of these slides, there is a plug and a URL link to NCL Spark if anybody hasn't joined and wants to.
Yeah, and just actually, to your point there, and NCL Spark, the way it's set up is sort of a newer thing. The user interface is really great. And honestly, 3 months ago when I was looking for a new job, I went on there and I looked, well, who's in Boston from Newcastle? Because once again, I don't know what I'd do with my life. Let me chat with different people in different industries and just introduce myself and just see where that goes. And the Spark connects you to LinkedIn so you can see a bit more about this person's history and background. And it was just cool to have a jumping off point like that, especially when I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Brilliant. And we've had a question from Ian, and he says, how are you able to overcome the stigma that can often come with job hopping, if you did ever find that?
Yeah, it's a great point, because I also look at people's resumes, right? And I work with people who scrutinize that. We're like, oh, this person only worked for this company and they worked for that company. Like, we don't want to interview them, right? So, and I'm not that type of person because my background is hopping around in many ways. I think it can be an elephant in the room, and for you to ignore that is wrong. All of the ends of my jobs, the reasons I switched, have really good reasons behind them. Whether the company failed, I was passionate about the company, it just didn't go on, or I got an offer from a company that helped me grow a lot. That might not be the best answer depending on the company and the situation, but the reality is, like, you got to own it. Like, yeah, I've been at 3 different companies in 6 years, but I loved each of these companies and they were different, and it wasn't sometimes my fault for leaving. It was a circumstance with the role. Say whatever you need to, honestly, in that position. And it's not about lying, but it's about making sure you paint yourself in light that you didn't just get up, pack your bags and leave and say, I'm leaving this company because I've got a better job at that company. You really have to story tell. And if that has to do with your intro letter, so you're writing your cover letter to that company and saying, this is why I'm interested and I've worked for these 2 companies, the only reason I left was for this or for that, be upfront about it. Don't be shy about it. Own your experience, and don't ever come off as someone who's just joining a new company because you're getting a bigger pay raise. Join a new company because it provided you a new opportunity, a better experience, allowed you to double down on your skill set, whatever that's, or your last company, and never talk negatively about your previous company ever. Your previous company was great. You loved the experience there. The team was awesome. You just didn't see a lot of room for growth in your current role, and you're someone who wants to grow in life. It's just really important. No one ever wants to hear negative things about your previous company, because lo and behold, it could be 3 years from now and you're talking about negative things about your current company. People just don't want to hear that.
And that's great advice, Evan. Yeah, definitely. We've had a question here from an American graduate who studied biomedical genetics and who is looking to apply for jobs in the US for after completion, but finding applications at the moment a little bit difficult. So the question is, what, if any, obstacles/challenges did you face when you were applying for jobs and telling prospective employers that you have a BA Honours from a foreign university? Did you find yourself at an advantage or a disadvantage in your field because of your non-US institution degree?
So first of all, too, as you're applying for jobs out there, don't always feel like the company needs to have a job available for you right now. For you to find someone at the company, reach out to them. People reach out to me all the time and say, hey, I'm looking for an internship, or I'm looking for a job at your company. I'm really passionate about what you do. For every company I've ever worked at. So, finding the right person who might be a manager in that company that you would work for is a great initiative. Doing that too when there's also a job application. So I've found a job application, I'm applying to it, but I also wanted to reach out to you and share my interest because I'm really passionate about this job, is great. That's like a two-sided follow-up there. Yes, if you're applying and you have a degree from an unknown university, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that you can play that to your advantages. Perhaps you got an incredible education experience, or perhaps stuff you've done at that university is really unique, and that's what you should lead forward with. People, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, had no idea what Newcastle was when I was applying out, but they knew it was in the UK, and I got a great education in the UK, and I like to travel, and I was fully immersed in business management. And again, it was just kind of telling that story there. But it's pretty rare anyone will judge you on the university that you went to. What they will judge you on is what you accomplished while you were at university. Your GPA that you got there, make sure it's converted into the American GPA, but also the clubs you're a part of, any internships you had there, any papers you wrote, really describing your passion at university more than just relying on that I went to University X. In America, there's hundreds of universities that I've never heard of before. It's so just because you went to university outside of America or even inside America doesn't give you a special advantage. There's just so many universities in America. It's wild.
I can imagine it's much bigger than the UK, isn't it? So I bet I haven't even heard of all the institutions in the UK, so I can't imagine how you keep up with it in the US, Evan, when you're looking at prospective employees. We've got another question from Kitty, and just in terms of the cost of living. So is the cost of living more expensive in the US? So she says, I know the dollar is worth 1.27 of UK pounds at the moment, but she's also noticed people mention that a $40,000 salary is not very good, whereas in the UK, a £50,000 a year salary would be one of the best jobs you could afford.
Yeah, it's definitely going to depend on where you live. In the UK, I was living in Newcastle, right? And so cost of living there wasn't so bad, but I could never afford to live in London. And if I did, it would be very far outside the city center. I'd be commuting pretty far distances. Living in Beijing, cost of living was very inexpensive. I was living a great life there and not having to spend much money to do so. So making 20,000 US dollars a year in Beijing at the time, 10 years ago, was awesome. I just couldn't even spend a lot of money there. And then here's America. So you have my experiences in Boston and LA, but I have friends that live all over America, in Texas, in New York City, in Florida, in Seattle. The truth is there's sort of two sides to this. When you're first applying to jobs, you don't really want to be so focused on the money. You really want to get experience under your belt. You got to think long term as opposed to short term. So really ensure you're joining, even if you're going to make $40,000 a year, ensure you're joining a good company where you can get experience under your belt. And then maybe you will switch to a new company in the next 2 years, or maybe they'll give you promotions and you'll grow. But life at a college or at a graduate school is all about experience. So never forget that. On the money side, and I've hired interns at minimum wage, which is less than 40,000, who have grown so much at our company that have gotten great experience that can then go on to apply to a company and make way more than minimum wage because of the experience that they got as a minimum wage intern working for us. So just keep that in mind, playing the long game. Yeah, $40,000 a year is not a lot of it. It's like what, 32,000 pounds a year. But the truth is, in every city, you're going to find a living scenario. In New York City, which is one of the most expensive cities in the world, you're not going to live in Manhattan, which is like the main island there. You're going to live perhaps in Brooklyn or Queens, which is outside the area. And you're going to be one of the, honestly, hundreds of thousands of people that commute into Manhattan every day for 45 minutes on the train. And you're going to meet people just like you who are working really hard to advance their careers, who aren't living in the city center. And you're going to grow with these people, and you're going to live with these people. You're going to dinner with these people, and you're all going to be working really hard to grow. And that's what it's like in every city. Every city, so many people are starting out not making a lot of money, paying their month by month rent. They're living in houses with 5 other people. The conditions aren't the greatest, but they're super focused on growing their career. And that's what it's all about. Life isn't going to stay that way if you work hard. But so many people start out that way. Don't ever be ignorant about that, honestly.
Brilliant. I think we've got time for a couple more questions. So one from Mary in the chat. So what do you recommend in regards to cover letters and avoiding uninteresting or repetitive in cover letters that you've seen?
So there's, I can take my opinion of this, but also couple it with some of my coworkers' opinions. Some people write very long cover letters. I find those to be a little too long sometimes. I want someone to kind of get to the point of the cover letter, and I want the cover letter to really talk about my company you're applying to. That's great. You have background doing this and that, but just show me in your cover. That's what your resume is for. That's why I read your resume, to see your background. But your cover letter, I want you to talk specifically to my company and why you're interested in joining my company and what you think perhaps you can bring to the table specifically for my company. That's what I want to grab at a cover letter. I want to say, after reading like a quick, 3-paragraph maximum cover letter, that this person's really interesting, and they've got a good resume. We should interview this person. At the same time, I would take that same cover letter and try to find those people on LinkedIn that work for the company and say, hey, I'm applying to this job, and almost like regurgitate my cover letter and just do whatever I can to get in front of that company, because companies get so many resumes and you're looking at a resume, oh, cool, interesting, great. But the cover letter can sometimes help it stand out, but also you reaching out directly to the company and saying you're applying this job can also really help you get the interview. Because at the first stage, all you're trying to do is get the interview. You're not trying to do anything else. So work hard to get that interview and apply to many companies, because the more companies you apply to, the more it feels like you've got momentum going and you're having conversations here and there, and you're not just relying on one company that may or may not actually ever get back to you.
Wonderful. And I think one of the ones that we can look to finish the Q&A on is quite a nice one, so hopefully you'll enjoy answering this. What is the best thing about working in the US? It's a loaded question.
The best thing, yeah, it's tough because there's not always one answer to that. The thing I love most about working in America is the diversity of America as a country. I'm telling you, Boston was so different than LA, and it was so much fun living in LA for 5 years. Great experience. LA in of itself is a super diverse city. 20 million people living in LA County. Exploring California when I was there was amazing. Traveling around, meeting new people, going to events around America. There's so much to do in this country. It's incredible. And I think all of us in America are both asking ourselves that question, realizing that right now, because we can't really leave America, that there is so much to do in this country. That's the best thing about it, that there's so much diverse companies here. In Boston, where I'm from, There's a lot of startup community. There's a financial community. There's there's a huge bio community. Moderna, one of the vaccine companies, is out of Boston. I've never done anything when it comes to biomedical in my life. Boston, where I'm from and where I've worked, is full of that. There's so many industries and diversity here that it allows someone to live the life I've lived, which is jumping around from different cities and different experiences, trying to figure out what I like in life and what I don't like in life. And I'm hopeful in the coming years, and maybe it's what I have now is my passion for the rest of my life, but America offers the opportunity to discover that. And that's why I always tell everyone I work with, and I know so many people are applying to jobs, they don't find something they like, and so they don't take it. You really have to go out, try new things and experience them to find out what you actually love. Don't just assume you love something, go out and do it. Or try things you like. A scooter company, I loved that. That was so much fun, but after 2 years, I didn't need to keep doing that. But more than likely, I will end up selling consumer products again sometime in my hopefully very long career. So that's what I love about America the most, is the diversity that one can discover.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Evan. It's been very enjoyable, and I know that a lot of individuals on the call have probably got a lot of information about working in the US and taking that next step. So just before we leave, I just wanted to close with a couple of points on my end. So if you are a current student or a recent graduate of 3 years and you're thinking about moving abroad or looking for careers advice, you're able to access the careers service. And so you're able to do that either online or in person, and information is all on our website. And they're a really good resource tool to really get you thinking about what is available to you as a graduate and what you might need on your CV, as Evan's talked about, and also opportunities within certain industries. And as I've already mentioned, we've also got NCL Spark, which everybody on this call should hopefully have access to. So yes, Evan,